An extraordinary peace deal in the Middle East, engineered by Donald Trump and his administration. And it's one of those rare moments where both Israel and the people of Gaza are celebrating. Everybody's happy. Everybody is, well, not everybody. There's teleprompter readers in television studios at cable news networks here in Washington who are very angry. They don't know what to do. We're going to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of the reactions of Donald Trump's extraordinary peace agreement in the Middle East coming up right now. Plus, a phenomenal moment in Washington yesterday when finally we had an administration and his FBI director and Attorney General take the threat of Antifa seriously, acknowledge that Antifa is in fact a violent terrorist organization. We're going to show you all the testimony and the incredible moments that unfolded there in the East Room at the White House right before our very eyes. And once again, how the media tried to downplay it and even lied to the American people about the real threat of Antifa. We're going to show you that. It's coming up. Plus, the shutdown continues, and we had a lot of theatrics yesterday with lawmakers trying to confront each other in front of cameras to make them go viral. And, well, we'll show you those moments, and you decide who's responsible for the virus in Washington. That's all coming up right now. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Thank you so much for liking our video right now. I think just based on the content I just described, you're going to like it. So go ahead and commit to the thumbs up at this moment and give us a subscribe here so you don't miss any of our future programs. I appreciate that very much. It helps grow our community, grow our family here, especially during our live show. If you're watching us after the fact on demand, come around at noon Eastern time and join the live chat, because what you see in the comment section right now on demand, it's nothing compared to the interactive live that our community engages in every single day. So do that, will you? And oh, this whole thing, you like this? You like my shirt? Yeah, you can have one of these too. We'll talk about that a little later in the show, but it is nice, isn't it? Thanks for that. Appreciate it. I want to be blunt. Gold is up around 40% this year. That's huge. I'm not speculating. I'm not guessing. I'm not predicting. It's reality. And if a portion of your savings isn't diversified into gold, you may be missing the boat. Here are the facts. Inflation, it's still too high. The U.S. dollar, still too weak. And the government debt is still increasing. Look at the chaos in D.C. right now. It's why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones driving up prices to record highs. And now it's not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group and get in the door right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA and 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. And you're not going to pay a penny out of pocket. All you got to do is text my name, Larry, to 989898. And you can claim your free info kit. And there's no obligation, just useful information. Gold has historically been used as a safe haven for literally millennia. There's no other anything that can say that. Text Larry to 989898 right now. Claim that free info kit on gold. That's Larry to 989898. Protect your future with Birch Gold. By now, you've heard that President Trump has engineered a miracle in the Middle East, a peace agreement that will return the hostages to Israel and the remains of those hostages that were killed in captivity. Hamas disarms, they disband, and Israel withdraws from the Gaza territories. The Arab nations in the Middle East have embraced this plan. Israel is celebrating in the streets. The Gazans are celebrating in the streets. It's only people in the American media who seem perplexed about this. Not everyone, though. And that's why it's a bit chaotic right now in newsrooms. They don't know what to make of it. Some people are being intellectually honest and say, yeah, you got to give Trump his due. But others are saying, hell no, we will never give Trump any due. We're going to show you all of those reactions coming up in this segment. But let's begin with the extraordinary moment that by now maybe you've seen. If you haven't, take a look. During an East Room roundtable conference on the dangers of Antifa, Secretary of State Marco Rubio approaches President Trump and whispers in his ear.
Criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I'm just giving. I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly. So I will take a couple of more questions.
Wow, that's something. It evokes that moment after 9/11 when President George W. Bush was doing an event with kindergartners, and his chief of staff came and whispered in his ear with the horrible news of America being under attack from radical Islamist terrorists from Al-Qaeda. This with a much happier ending, certainly, as the president receives this information. I want to show you another version of these events, though, if I could. This captured by the New York Post. Take a look at this moment as Rubio is talking with Deputy Chief of Staff Steve Miller and somebody to Miller's right. He's got a note that he's just penned trying to give President Trump this information. He reaches behind Attorney General Bondi to hand the note to him. Trump reads the note, watch him look at it and react to what the note says. Now watch, he's going to turn back to Rubio and he's going to give him a hand signal under the table asking him to come over to him. He's sort of giving it this, right? Rubio comes over, whispers the final details, and that's when Trump makes the announcement.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly. So I will take a couple of more questions.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be able to witness events in real time. World history taking place right before our eyes with cameras everywhere so that we can see it and we can participate in it and watch it occur. And listen, before I get too excited about it, I recognize the fact that one side of this peace deal are terrorists, murderers, ruthless, bloody, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating terrorists. I get it. I'm not going to be completely ecstatic or comfortable or take a full breath until I see all of those hostages released. Just signing and saying that they'll do it is never enough. But we're closer to peace in that region than we've ever been, certainly since the October 7th massacre. And yes, we have President Trump to thank for it. Take a look at this extraordinary photograph. It's a close-up of the note that Rubio signed him. I hope somebody has saved this for the presidential archives. I want to see this in the presidential library that's being paid for by CBS News and ABC News through the defamation settlements that they've given. If you can read it here, very close, underlined very twice. We need you to approve Truth Social post soon so you can announce deal first. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary and a remarkable time. How remarkable is it? I want to show you how they reacted on MSNBC this morning. This is presidential historian John Meacham, a Trump hater. This is the guy they roll out whenever they need someone with authority, because he's a historian, to tell you how absolutely outside the norms President Trump is and how he has degraded the presidency and he will be going down in history as the worst president in American history. That's who John Meacham is. And this was his reaction.
One of the things about honesty and citizenship and a sense of, I would say, maturity about what people in a democracy should do is, even if someone with whom you disagree about 99 things does the 100 really well, you should say so, because that's what intellectual honesty is. And so all credit to President Trump and his, as you say, unconventional team. But if he takes an unconventional team, that's fine, right? I remember once asking the senior President Bush after something terrible had happened. It's a sign of something that I can't remember what it was after he'd been president. Something had happened in the Middle East. And I said, this is the man who spent decades dealing with this. I said, Mr. President, do you think this ever gets resolved? And he said, God, I don't know. That's what one of the most experienced diplomatic presidents in American history thought, is that it was an unknowable thing.
That's right. One of the most experienced diplomatic presidents in American history never conceived of this moment happening. And so I want to just take a step back for a moment, because I've been saying this often on this show. All of these critics of Donald Trump, all the people who have just the reflex knee-jerk reaction that he is everything the evil incarnate, that it's the end of our Constitution, it's the end of our republic, we'll never have another vote again. He's Hitler, he's Stalin, he's, fill in the blanks, whatever the hell it is. And I often just say, these people, what if you're wrong? What if you happen to be on the wrong side of history with regard to President Trump and his abilities, even though he's unorthodox, even though he's different, even though it makes you have to, step outside of the little cardboard box that your intellect has been in for the last several decades. Stop for a moment and step outside that box for a second. Just look at it from someone else's perspective. Dare I say, look at it from our perspective, those people who have actually supported this president. What if you're wrong? And it's that moment that you just saw that makes you wonder, could this be the moment where they say, hold on, if I was wrong about Trump on this, what else might I have been wrong about? Is this that moment where things could shift forever about the perception of this president? I'd love to hear your reaction, if you agree with me that this could be that moment, that it took some transcendent impossibility like what we're witnessing right now for people to finally get shocked out of their system and think, wow, I mean, it's not easy for somebody to say they were wrong about something that they were so passionate about. Could this be the moment? Let me know down in the comments or in the live chat if you agree with me or if you think that I'm just being a little too optimistic and, dare I say, naive. I'd love to hear from you. A little bit more from Morning Joe, though, right now. By the way, this is another part of this story, the way the media is reacting. We've got people in the media who are, yes, giving Trump credit for this reluctantly. We've also got people who have tried to crap all over this deal immediately, of course. I'm looking at you, Jake Tapper. We'll show you that in a second. But even when they're telling the truth and speaking honestly and objectively about what an extraordinary moment this is in American world history, really, they've got looks like that. Look at Joe and Mika. Look at them. Look at David Ignatius. Look at the three of them. They look like they're reporting on the death of a world leader. They look like they're reporting on the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. They look like they're about to go to the funeral itself. Even when delivering the good news, the objectively by every measure good news. I want to repeat, both the Gazans, Palestinian people, and the people in the streets of Israel are both sides popping champagne corks. Both sides of this war are praising Donald Trump. He got Israel and the Palestinians and Saudi Arabia all to be on the same page, and all of them walk away thinking that they got the good end of the deal. And look at how it's being reported with their expressions on their faces, like they just sucked on a lemon. It's an extraordinary thing. Watch David Ignatius now, Morning Joe.
The deal that President Trump is announcing played a key part in negotiating. It is a significant change. This war was blocked for 2 years. President Biden, who preceded him, was unable to find a way to stop it. President Trump found that way by being tough on both sides. And he'll take a victory lap for sure over the next few days, but it's deserved. There's no way that I can see that this would have been done without Trump's pressure in the final hours.
Make no mistake, when you hear the tone, when you look at his face, he's pissed about this. He is, again, I want to extend as much grace as possible. He might not be pissed that the killing has ended. He might not be pissed that there's peace, but he's pissed that he have to say out loud that Donald Trump deserves credit for it, that it wouldn't have happened had Donald Trump not won the presidency. He's pissed about that, and he can't hide his anger. He can't hide his rage. How extraordinary is this moment? I mean, this guy, Dan Goldman, Trump derangement syndrome patient A in the House of Representatives, led the charge on impeachment A and B. Dan Goldman, last night on CNN.
This was not doable when President Biden was in office.
I think the biggest problem that the President Biden had is there was no pressure from Qatar, from Turkey, from Egypt. They were actually facilitating in many ways what was going on. And that is really ultimately how it all came together.
So, I mean, but I think by saying that, it's sort of an acknowledgement. Trump has changed that dynamic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think
absolutely.
that,
I mean, he's clearly.
I don't know how he,
changed
you know, and I think there's a lot that remains to learn about what prompted that change. But I do agree, yes, so, somehow, some way that changed.
Somehow, some way that changed. Okay. Dan, listen, I appreciate you giving that little crumb. But do you mind if just an amateur here who merely watches the news and the events of the day over the course of the last several years, do you mind if I chime in here and maybe lend some ideas as to how that changed, what made the change? Gee, so you say that the problem here is that Qatar and the other countries in that region who were propping up Hamas and even in some cases funding them, how they suddenly withdrew their support from Hamas. And how did that happen? Well, I don't know if you know about this, Dan. I know you're just a member of Congress and you're heir to the Levi fortune and you're a lousy lawyer and all you do is, tweet and do TV appearances. You don't have time to watch the news. But President Trump sent the United States military on one of the most extraordinary missions of our time. The Air Force, B-2 bombers leaving the state of Missouri and flying halfway around the world, along with a submarine in the Persian Gulf, hitting Iran's nuclear facilities, within a quarter of an inch accuracy of hitting them after flying around the world without them even knowing that we were coming, because that's what stealth bombers do. And the 30-plus Tomahawk missiles, or were they Tritons, that got shot from a submarine from underwater in the Persian Gulf, blowing a gaping hole in the bunker where their nuclear program was sitting, and then all of the bombs from the B-2 going through that hole and exploding their entire nuclear program out of the water. Do you think maybe the other countries in that region thought, whoa, I guess they could really hurt us if they wanted to? And that guy sitting in the White House, he's not beholden to the angry mobs on the streets at Columbia University or the deep-pocketed organizations that are funding our efforts in the American left-wing organizations that we fund. Suddenly, we've got a guy in the White House who is ignoring the left-wing pro-Hamas maniacs. And, oh, by the way, he'll give the green light to bomb Iran with that kind of precision. You think maybe, Dan, that might have had something to do with it? Maybe having a loose cannon in the White House who's more than willing to kill our enemies gets people's attention. And they recognize that maybe they don't want to be on the same side as our enemies. Sorry, Dan, that you didn't kind of put those pieces together and connect those dots, but I assure you that was a big part of this. I assure you. Sadly, not everybody in the American media was ready to give President Trump any due. In fact, this extraordinary moment on MSNBC is the perfect example. Rachel Maddow, who is I'm so sorry, that's Chris Hayes. It's a simple mistake. I apologize. Chris Hayes with Congressman Ro Khanna, who I'm told is, a moderate, reasonable Democrat. Well, they decided to wax poetic about the fact that it was really Joe Biden who deserves the credit. I'm not joking. According to them, Joe Biden really laid the foundation for this peace deal. Trump just went in and messed it up and then decided to announce it now so that he could get credit. I'm not kidding.
There was a deal that was sort of jointly negotiated by the outgoing Biden administration, the incoming Trump administration, that was also multiple phases. The first phase was the release of some hostages, a cessation of bombing. That never got to phase 2 the first time around. Instead, the war continued after that. So your point is well taken. Do you think there's a role do you worry that Trump wants to get the Nobel Prize on Friday? It's sort of, I really don't mean that as a joke. I mean, the Hamas negotiators even talked to DropSite, which has been doing reporting on this, on the record, saying they know that the Nobel Peace Prize matters. that there's some desire to get something done that may not then endure in even the medium term.
I was talking to Diane, your producer, right before the show, and I said Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize and Gandhi didn't. So I'm not sure how much the Nobel Peace Prize means,
Fair
but it
point.
means a lot to Donald Trump.
Wow. So a couple things. Oh, really? Biden had this structured deal, but Trump blew it up so he could take credit. You're a jerk. And there's no fact or historical basis to support that notion. There's no way Biden could ever get this deal. You know how I know? Because he had a year and a half to get this deal and he didn't. That's how I know. And the problem is that Joe Biden was compromised by all of the forces within his party who are, in fact, on the side of the terrorists. It wasn't going to happen. The terrorists knew that. Excuse me. Also, this whole thing about the Nobel Peace Prize. First of all, I don't care about the Nobel Peace Prize. As long as Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing, Al Gore got the Nobel Peace Prize for lying to you about carbon emissions and your SUVs, and Yasser Arafat, an actual murdering terrorist, got the Nobel Peace Prize for nothing, for agreeing to stop killing Jews. And then he continued to kill Jews. As long as Nobel has given the Peace Prize to those people for those reasons, it's not worth anything. But let me just say, if you are looking at this peace deal and you're evaluating it based on whether Trump did it to get the Nobel Peace Prize or not, you have a broken moral compass. Let me just tell you, they're going to announce the Peace Prize tomorrow. Donald Trump is not going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. They will never give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize, and I want to be wrong. And I will be on the air right here tomorrow telling you how happy I am that I'm wrong. But I don't think it's going to happen. It just won't. But let me just say this. And I would have asked Chris Hayes this if he ever deigned to have me on the show. Chris, if Donald Trump engineered a peace deal that everybody seems to be happy with in the Middle East, and there's a ceasefire and the hostages are being released, and there's now a timetable for Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza territory so that people can come back and rebuild it so it's a civilized place to live, and he did all of that just so he can get a Nobel Peace Prize, so what? So, I mean, oh, well, he just did it to get the prize. Who cares what his motivation is? If he was able to do it, that is objectively a great thing. But they just can't bring themselves to that point. They can't. They have too much invested in their hatred. Which brings us to Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper, the last real journalist in Washington, D.C., he's the most serious of them all. He's the only one that you should take seriously. Just ask him. As the details of this peace plan were being reported last night by their White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Oh, look, they're not shooting her in profile. Caitlin Collins delivering the news to Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper decided that he had to point out that, whoa. This isn't really a peace plan, guys. Yeah, that's right. Everyone's calling it a peace plan. Everyone's calling it a peace agreement. The Israelis are calling it a peace agreement. The Gazans are calling it a peace agreement. The neighboring Arab nations are calling it a peace agreement. But Jake Tapper, as usual, knows better than everybody else. It's not really a peace deal. And the reason why this isn't a peace deal? Watch.
Obviously, blessed are the peacemakers indeed. But it is worth pointing out, this is a ceasefire deal, right? This is not a larger peace deal about a Palestinian state of any sort and who gets to rule a Palestinian state and Israel gets security guarantees, how, and all that. That is still TBD, right?
I mean, yes, but because the yes, but part of that is that, yes, this is the first phase of this deal where the two key parts of that was a ceasefire and the release of the hostages and also the release of Palestinian prisoners that are being held in Israel.
I literally cannot believe what I just saw. Jake Tapper, by the way, who I believe is Jewish and for the most part is a supporter of the state of Israel, certainly props himself up to be. But did he just say what I heard him say? By the way, Everyone is saying this is phase one of the peace deal, that do this first. Everyone has said nothing happens until you release the hostages. Nothing. And there's other things that we can discuss, but release the hostages, and then the shooting ends, and then there's a withdrawal, and then there's more to discuss in the rebuilding platform. So to act like he's some sort of brilliant observer of this entire process by pointing out, well, you know, it's not really. But did you hear what he said in terms of what would constitute an actual peace deal in the Middle East? Watch it again with me.
Obviously, blessed are the peacemakers indeed. But it is worth pointing out, this is a ceasefire deal, right? This is not a larger peace deal about a Palestinian state of any sort and who gets to rule a Palestinian state.
So let me just be clear here. Smart guy with his smart guy glasses, furrowed brow, most important, serious journalist in Washington, D.C., Jake Tapper, is now on the record saying that there will never actually be any kind of Middle East peace deal with regard to Israel unless the Palestinians get their own sovereign state. That's your position now? Really? Because, funny, that's the same position as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranians. Well, actually, I guess they also want Israel to be wiped off the face of the planet, but who knows? That's the next step, certainly. Hold on. So it's not a peace deal unless the Palestinians have their own sovereign state with a standing army right on the border of Israel? Is that Jake Tapper's position here? Otherwise, it's really just a tenuous ceasefire. We can't really have peace until the Palestinians have a nuclear weapon, perhaps. What the hell? Also, I noticed something else about this. Take a look. It's a weird tick that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash and other CNN journalists have. I don't know if it's a signal to the producers in the booth to like end the segment or change the subject or something. When Caitlin Collins gets caught off guard by this and she starts stammering and having to work up the courage to tell Jake Tapper that what he said is complete, total nonsense. Watch what Jake Tapper does with a tilt of his head. It's like an abrupt cock of his head, if I may use that term, to a 45-degree angle. Watch it. It's weird. Nobody does this. Dana Bash does it all the time. I think it's some kind of CNN thing that the nice haircut teleprompter readers do to send some sort of signal that after this question, we're going to end the segment. I don't know. You tell me if you notice it. Or maybe just Jake Tapper's weird, which I'm open to that. Watch.
And Israel gets security guarantees, how, and all that. That is still TBD, right?
I mean, yes, but, because the yes, but part of that is that, yes, this is the first phase of this deal where the
who holds their head like that? It's a weird. I mean, it's try doing that. Try cocking your head like that. You have to go out of your way to do it. And I don't know if he's trying to look thoughtful and intelligent, or maybe I'm just nitpicking. And there, but for the grace of God, go I. Maybe we'll just stick with Jake Tapper's a weird dude. But that's it for how they reported on this story last night and this morning across the media spectrum. That's the good, that's the bad, that's the ugly. The bottom line is there's a peace deal. And by Monday, those hostages will be home. And that's a great thing. And if it means Donald Trump gets credit for it, well, God forbid people actually step outside their cushy little world of hatred and acknowledge something good that came out of the bad orange man in the White House. All right, let's set up for our next one. And while I do, I will tell you that this shirt could be yours. Oh, you thought I was going to do... Actually, you're right. Let's like this video, everybody. I'm looking at the numbers. I mean, a lot of you are there. A lot of you have already liked it. But if you like what I just had to say about the peace deal and the media reaction, why don't you put your clicking where your mouth is and give us a thumbs up wherever you're watching us? And we'll double our audience while we're watching. That's how it works. It's weird, isn't it? And tell me if you think that Jake Tapper is just a weirdo, or if you think that head cock was actually a message to his studio. And finally, get yourself a Larry shirt. This is the golf shirt. There's actually a t-shirt too. That's very cool. I'll wear that just as Larry like that. But the Larry Town Hall golf shirts are great. They're made with the what do you call it? The what do you call this material? The sport fit? What do you call it, Kevin? You know what I mean? The dry fit. Dry fit. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You don't want to say? All right.
I'm not going to talk for the rest of the show now.
No, I want you to talk. They're brought to you by Adidas, by the way. But they're lovely. It's an embroidered shirt, and you can get it in your favorite color, and you can get that at store.townhallmedia.com. Store.townhallmedia.com. Get yourself a Larry shirt and be with the cool kids. All right, let's get right to it. Couple of showboating Democrats tried to go viral by confronting Mike Johnson in the halls of the Capitol yesterday over the government shutdown. Did not end well for them. I mean, it went viral, but they're the ones who ended up needing the penicillin shot. I'll show you that moment in a moment. But first, listen, there's awkward media moments happening across the board here. That's kind of bipartisan because as this government shutdown almost reaches the end of its second week, nobody looks good right now at the end of the day. And I regret to inform you that Speaker Mike Johnson, he had a tough one this morning on C-SPAN. Watch what happened, and then we'll talk about it.
The question is, if Republicans and Democrats can agree to a one-year extension to the ACA subsidies, removing this sort of talking point of illegal immigrants draining our resources as you sit here and lie about this, would you support that bill and bring it to a vote on the House floor? This is a big question that I have for you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, not lying. I'm telling you the truth, and you can go look at all the documents yourself. Don't look at Republican paperwork. Look at the Congressional Budget Office, who said that we had at least 1.4 million illegal aliens draining the resources from Medicaid, which is why we put their forms in the law and got it signed July 4th. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries' counterproposal for the CR would reverse all that. Look at page 57, section 2141 of the bill that they filed. I made it easy for you. Go to speaker.gov, my website. It's right there on the homepage. See for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Look what they wanted to do.
All right. So that's Mike Johnson pushing back good with the facts. And then he got this caller who claims that she's a Republican and the wife of an active duty military member who's working without pay right now and is about to miss a paycheck. Here, take a look. Hang on. Sorry.
Hi, Mr. Johnson. So my question or comments are related to what you said yesterday about not being open to pass any legislation to ensure that military gets paid. I'm sure you can tell by my voice I'm very shaky. Just want you to hear a little bit about my family. I have two medically fragile children. I have a husband who actively serves this country. He suffers from PTSD from his 2 tours in Afghanistan. If we see a lapse in pay come the 15th, my children do not get the medication that's needed for them to live their life, because we live paycheck to paycheck. I heard you earlier say that you side with President Trump on anything that he says. Well, I just read an article this morning that said he absolutely wholeheartedly believes that there needs to be legislation put in so that we do not miss a paycheck. You have the power to do that. And as a Republican, I'm very disappointed in my party, and I'm very disappointed in you, because you do have the power to call the House back. You did that, or you refused to do that just for a show. I am begging you to pass this legislation. My kids could die. We don't have the credit because of the medical bills that I have to pay regularly. You could stop this, and you could be the one that could say military is getting paid. And I think that it is awful, and the audacity of someone who makes 6 figures a year to do this to military families is insane.
All right, Samantha.
All right. Now, first of all, you'll see his answer in a second. I want you to know, I don't think that was really a Republican. It was in Virginia, by the way. That sounded like a planted caller. That said, the speaker decided he wanted to walk into this forum. He wanted to go on C-SPAN. He wanted to take calls, and he should have known that he was going to get callers like that, specifically like that. And understand that there are several standalone bills that would start to open up portions of the government, including paying the military, that right now Republicans have said, no, we're not going to play this game. Open up the government, and then we can talk about whatever else you want to talk about. And that's their negotiating stance. And I think they're on the right side of the issue. But you got to be able to communicate it well. Here's Speaker Johnson's answer. And we're big fans of Speaker Johnson. But notice how the narrative is going on this issue right now.
Samantha, I'm so sorry to hear about your situation. The reason I've been so angry this week, and they've been calling me out on media, Johnson's angry. I am angry because of situations just like yours. I have a big military district, and my district is the home of the Global Strike Command at Barksdale Air Force Base and Fort Polk, the Joint Readiness Training Center. I have one of the biggest military districts and military families in America. I have a lot of airmen and soldiers who are deployed right now, and they have young families at home, and they have children in health situations like yours. This is what keeps me up at night. I want you to hear something very clearly. The Republicans are the ones delivering for you. We had a vote to pay the troops. It was the continuing resolution 3 weeks ago. Every single Republican but 2 voted to keep the government open so that your paycheck can flow. Every Democrat in the House, except for 1, voted to close it. The Democrats are the ones that are preventing you from getting a check. If we did another a vote on the floor, pay troops, it's not a lawmaking exercise because Chuck Schumer is going to hold that up in the Senate. He is demonstrating by voting now 6 times to keep the government closed that he does not want the troops to be paid. And you should listen to his comments last night, as reported this morning. He is enjoying this. He said every day gets better for us, quote unquote. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are preventing your family from getting the care they need, not Republicans. And my heart goes out to you.
All right. So do you think that's the right answer to that caller? Now, listen, I think for our audience and for the larger audience, I think that that resonates. I think for people who are in that woman's position right now, it doesn't do much for her. It plays into the concept that this is just a lot of finger pointing and blame game, and that real people are getting crunched in between. And it sends that message to people who aren't following this story enough. Now, I know people aren't watching C-SPAN, but moments like that, they get picked up in various parts of the media. In fact, you'll probably see it later tonight on cable news if you're accidentally watching cable news instead of football. They need to hone in on this issue, and they need to let the American people, especially those who are actually getting impacted by the government shutdown, and there are people who are getting impacted by this, that they're on their side, yes, but ultimately this is a failure of everyone in Washington, D.C. right now. And the Republicans are going to do whatever they can, as long as it's responsible, to get that government open. That was exactly the way this narrative is going right now. And it's not easy for Republicans to continue to navigate this thing, especially when Democrats are being so stubborn and obstinate, and they're playing political games with people's lives. Don't believe me that they're playing political games? Well, take a look at this scene yesterday when the 2 senators from Arizona confronted Mike Johnson in front of his office in the Capitol. Now, make no mistake, this was all staged. This was for the media. They brought the cameras over from the Senate side of the building. And understand something very important. This entire story right now in Washington, D.C. is a Senate story. The House has done their job. They've passed the funding for the government. They're waiting for the Senate to do the same. So what the hell are these 2 Democrat senators doing confronting Mike Johnson about it? Well, they're angry that Mike Johnson went into recess and sent congressmen home to their districts. But listen, maybe the optics aren't good, but Mike Johnson is like, we've done our job. You go back and make sure that the people in your districts are okay. Keep communicating with them while we wait for the Senate to get off their butts. All right, so here's what happened, and watch how this narrative turns on the Democrats.
The longest time the House
Do you want me to
has been
answer the question? If you ask
because
question,
you're not actually answering the question. Let's be clear. The reason Alita Grajava is not here is because Mike Johnson wants to do 2 things. Number 1, cover up for pedophiles on the Epstein list. And number 2, put his members in a really rough position when it comes to voting and extending these ACA tax credits. You just keep coming up with excuses. This is an excuse, so she doesn't sign on to that.
This is absurd.
This is the longest time the House
Do you
has
want
been
me to
out of
answer the
Senate.
question? If you ask
Because
question,
you're not
let me answer.
actually answering the question. This
Okay.
entirely has to do with the
Okay.
Epstein
You
list.
see, this is a publicity stunt.
So then
And I was in the room with all of them.
Why are you blocking her then?
I'm not blocking her. I just
This
told
is the
you.
longest time that the House of Representatives has been out of session. That's not in a regular August session. This is the longest time it's taken for someone to be sworn in. And it all happens to coincide with the fact that she's going to be the deciding vote on the discharge petition.
I know why you're upset.
So that's Senator Ruben Gallego from Arizona. He's talking about swearing in a newly elected member of the House of Representatives, and it has something to do with the Epstein files. It's all a distraction. It has nothing to do with the government shutdown. So here comes Congressman Mike Lawler of New York, who's in town, and he sees this scene going on, and he starts to engage.
You voted multiple times to keep the government shut down, okay? The Republican members from Arizona voted to keep the government open. So don't sit here and try to lecture us about whether or not we did our job. We did our job. You did not.
Well, you're not doing your job right now.
Oh, you mean the bill that I'm signed on to extend it? Oh, yeah, cute, right, because you know what? We actually have put forth legislation to do it. You guys just keep pontificating. How about you go down the hall and go vote to open the government up? That would be great. All right, here's the clean CR. Go vote to open the government up. Thank you very much.
We're going to have.
By the way,
wait a minute.
Mike, if you bring them back, we will have a discussion with them. It's very simple.
You're holding the American people hostage.
We're
You want to have a
Yes, you
policy
are.
debate.
Yes, you
We
are,
have
sir.
policy debates here every
This
day.
is policy
The House works on
debate.
that.
There's no policy debate when nobody's there.
We
You're talking
have
to
to-
yourself.
Hello,
This
I'm
guy
here.
Thanks. We're having the debate
My
all around the
constituents and
clock.
yours, I imagine yours are going to be hurt even worse than ours. With
We
these premium increases.
we have a lot of
We have
issues to
to
work
fix
on
this.
together,
When
and the
people-
Republicans
when
are the
people don't have
party.
healthcare,
Wait a minute.
people
The party that's gonna kill health.
But
No,
by
exactly
the
what's
way,
gonna
by the way,
happen.
healthcare premiums since 2010, when Obamacare passed, have risen by over 60%. So what
Who's
you're,
that?
what
So
you're,
so you want to cut now? You want to cut
you're
now?
not
No,
upset
we
about
wanna
that?
reform
You
it.
should be upset
Well,
about
then
that.
get going.
You should
Get
be
your
upset
people
about
online and
that,
get
that
the
your
reforms.
constituents have
We're
had
ready- we're ready
huge
to go
healthcare
now.
premiums under Obamacare.
300%. And I imagine in Louisiana it's that high.
Yeah, no, there are big
My
problems with
folks get
healthcare.
it.
There's big problems with Obamacare. It needs a lot of reform. The
We're gonna
Republicans
talk about
have
that.
ages
We're
of
gonna talk
ideas.
about
So get the government open.
We have hundreds of ideas. Guys,
Get
we
your
got to
people
get the
in.
government open and turn the lights on so we can get everybody
Get your
back in
people
the
in
regular
and
session.
stop covering up for the pedophiles.
There's not.
Nobody's covering up for pedophiles, so
You know-
knock it the hell off.
She knows, you
You're,
know.
you're
that she
absolutely
is the-
absurd.
you know
Okay,
she is
I'm
the
going to get
problem.
back to work. These gentlemen had a publicity stunt here. You see the issue. They need to go and vote to reopen the government.
Get your
Plain
people
and
back.
simple.
One of
Get
them.
your-
The House has done its work. Every single Republican in the House but one voted to keep the government open, to make sure TSA agents, Border Patrol agents,
And even if they
the
do
troops
anything,
and everybody
they're
else
not
obey.
here next week, even if we strike a deal. You have to
and
get
the
them coming
Democrats
back.
have voted repeatedly to keep the government closed. Plain and simple. That
Premiums
is
are
the
gonna go
issue.
up.
First things first, open
Premiums
the
are going
government.
up.
We'll get back to
Mike,
work.
you're
Thanks.
gonna
Thank you all.
Can I ask you-
All right, so that publicity stunt backfired on them, blew up in their face. I love that camera angle right there, by the way. That's the speaker's ceremonial office. He's also got an office, a real working office over in, I think, the Cannon office building. But if you look down that, the doorway behind you there, as Congressman Lawler was saying, why don't you go down the hall, get back into your chamber, and you do the work. So that blue light that you're seeing there, that haze, that's actually coming from the sunlight, because that's the rotunda, the big Capitol dome that you see when you go look at Washington, D.C. on your postcards or whatever. That's the rotunda. And then on the other side of the rotunda, in that little hallway that you can see in the doorway, that's where the Senate chambers are. The House chambers are over on this side of the building. It's just sort of a neat thing to show that they went out of their way to walk all the way across the rotunda, bringing all of those cameramen with them and all those reporters with them. It's like, we're going to confront Mike Johnson about Jeffrey Epstein and covering up for pedophiles. You know why they're doing that? Because they got nothing else to do. Because the Senate is still in session. They're having a daily vote about the continuing resolution, and they're just sitting there on their butts, not doing a damn thing. So like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's go down and do this. And so bald head Mark Kelly, they're from Arizona, with Ruben Gallego, who thinks he's going to run for president next time around. He just got into the Senate, and he's going to run for president. He's a transcendent political figure. All right, so Mike Lawler from New York kind of enjoyed that. He saw that he was able to sort of push it back in their face. He had a copy of the continuing resolution. He was smacking them around a bit. So he decided, you know what? This is fun. I'm going to go over to Hakeem Jeffries' office now. And he did. Take a look.
We got a 1-year extension. Why don't we sign on right now?
Let me ask you a question. Did you
Why don't we sign
get
on right
permission
now?
from your boss?
Why don't we sign on right now?
Did your boss Donald
You
Trump?
can easily extend
Did your
the
boss
ACA right now.
Donald Trump
He's
give
not
you
my
permission?
boss.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not. And by the way,
So let me ask you a
why
question.
did you vote to
Let me
shut
ask
the
you a
government
question.
down?
You
Why
know
did you
I-
vote to shut
Let
it
me
down?
ask you a question.
For years, you always lecture about how we need to keep the government open.
You're making a show of this to
No,
make
it's
yourself
sad.
relevant.
It's sad. You could
It's
easily
an
sign on to
You're
this.
embarrassing
You
yourself
could
right
sign
now.
on to this. The only
You're
embarrassment
chasing
here is you.
clout. You're an
You could
embarrassment.
sign on to the bill.
Let me ask you a question.
You have 4 Democrats on here.
Let me ask
Why
you a
won't you
question.
sign on
Let me ask
to
you a
it?
question.
It's a clean
Let me
extension
ask you a
for 1
question.
year.
You voted for the one big
Clean
ugly bill,
extension.
correct?
I voted for a
The
tax cut
largest-
bill that gave the
the
largest
largest
tax
cut-
cut
the
to
largest-
Americans in history,
the
including, by
largest-
the way, the average New Yorker getting a $4,000 tax cut. Are you against that?
You're embarrassing
Do you want
yourself
to
right
you want
now.
to cut the standard deduction in
The
half? Is that
largest
what you
cut
wanted
to
do?
Medicaid in
No, we
American
rooted
history.
out
You
waste,
voted for that.
fraud, and abuse, by the
You
way.
voted
Tom DiNapoli, the
for a
Democratic
permanent-
controller of New
Let me
York,
ask you a question.
pointed out that $1.2 billion were wasted.
Listen, you're not going to talk. You're not going to talk to me.
Wasted
You're not
on
going to talk to me
fraud
and talk
and
over
non-New
me
York residents
because you don't
getting
want to
paid.
hear what I have to say.
Oh, I'm
So
listening.
why don't
Go
you
ahead.
just keep your mouth shut?
Oh,
Because you
is
showed
that-
up.
Is that the way to
You
talk?
showed up. You showed up.
Yeah.
And so you voted for this one
I
big
signed
ugly
on to
bill,
this. You can extend it
a
right now.
permanent extension of massive tax breaks for your billionaire donors.
So 90% of Americans.
So they can get a permanent extension.
90% of
but
Americans
working
take the
class
standard
Americans
deduction.
can't? Is that right?
90% of Americans take the standard deduction.
Is that right?
If you had your way, the standard deduction would have been cut in half. That
No
would have been a
one-
massive tax increase
one-
on Americans all across the country.
You're
You support
here,
that?
unfortunately,
You're against
to do
lifting the
the
cap on
bidding
salt?
of your billionaire donors.
The
That's
billionaire
unfortunate.
donors lifting the
That's
cap on
correct.
salt. We put a income cap in place.
Why are you here right now?
An income
Where
cap.
the rest
Well,
of
didn't
your
you want all
Republican
Republicans
colleagues?
I'll be honest, Hakeem Jeffries is much better when he's got the sombrero and mustache on. That was just a bloodbath. It goes on for a couple of more minutes. It ain't good. He's bad at this. And Lawler was on point, on message, and it was brilliant. But you heard in there this drastic cuts to Medicaid subsidies, right? This is a talking point they're trying to do. It's a lie. It's a lie, and the lie is not being sustained anymore in any way whatsoever. I'll show you in a second a devastating moment where the lie gets exposed. Last night on CNN, but first this morning, Hakeem Jeffries tried to take his dog and pony show and all of his lies to CNBC. Joe Kernan was not having any of it, and again, Hakeem Jeffries crash and burn. Man, this was like call the fight. It's over. This is like horrible.
There was an election, and the Republicans were put in a position where they were able to pass the big, beautiful bill, or you call it the big, ugly bill, to then say, we don't like any of that, so we're going to shut down the government until you take back all the things that you duly passed through legislation. If Republicans had tried to do that to the Inflation Reduction Act or the any of the acts that Biden and that administration have passed, if they said we're going to shut down the government because we don't like any of those things you did, we're going to not pay our military, we're going to, not allow the government to reopen until you do what we want. After an election where the American people put Democrats in power, you'd be going crazy. You'd be going crazy about using a shutdown of the government with a continuing resolution to get what you want just because you don't like what the Republicans did. It's not how it works. It's bad. It's bad precedent, and it's just clear. And you're talking about the House. You've already passed this. The Senate is who we're talking about, and they have a bill which will reopen the government right now with 5 more Democrats.
What is bad precedent is the Republican refusal to engage in bipartisan negotiations. What is bad precedent is the Republicans embarking on a my way or the highway approach from the very beginning of this Congress. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Joe, you're exactly right. So if the government shuts down, they've made the decision to shut the government down. And they can reopen it right now if they chose to, with a rule change in the Senate. But I just explained it. The reality is they want to keep the government closed. Cruelty from the very beginning of this administration has been the point. And the responsible thing to do is to sit down and negotiate a bipartisan path forward to address a very real healthcare crisis that's upon us right now. Open enrollment starts
can you
on
do
November
that? Can you do
1st.
those negotiations while the government is reopened? I think that's the offer that's been on the table. We did hear the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, talking about how, look, he passed a clean CR. There's not really much for him to politic in because there's nothing to take out. Any Republican pork that they pushed into this to take out of it to offer as a way of getting around this. Can you reopen the government and have these conversations if there's a willing party on the other side, which it sounds like there is if you talk to some of the Republicans who see this as an issue in their district as well?
Well, certainly Marjorie Taylor Greene has made clear that it's a very real issue. It's an issue that Republicans have ignored throughout this year, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed right now. Mike Johnson has made the representation, including at that White House meeting that we had last week, after Chuck Schumer and I reached out to demand that we have the conversation, unfortunately, it took place literally a day before the government shut down because Republicans have refused to engage in bipartisan negotiations.
Did you notice he didn't answer the question? The question is, can you just open the government, pass the resolution, and then you can have your negotiation about your Obamacare crisis? He wouldn't answer the question because that's the fundamental question that every American should be asking. Republicans have said, yeah, you're right. We got to fix this Obamacare thing because Obamacare screwed up health insurance in this country over the last 15 years. It's become a disaster. We warned you it would be a disaster. I'm glad you're finally accepting the fact that it's a disaster and it needs to be fixed or completely chucked out the window. So we'll love to have that conversation, but don't hold the American people hostage by shutting down the government. And by the way, the Democrats don't want to fix Obamacare. What they want to do is keep taking money that they don't have and give it as subsidies to give it to people to pay for their extraordinary expensive health insurance costs that were originally put in because of COVID-19 pandemic conditions. They want to keep those subsidies going to make it look like everything's fine with Obamacare. The crisis that's about to hit right now is that those subsidies have expired because the pandemic was 5 years ago. We're not under a pandemic anymore. So the subsidies have expired, and now everybody's going to see exactly how expensive their health insurance is because the Affordable Care Act was never affordable. It's all been smoke and mirrors in a shell game with money that they don't have, putting us deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. That's what they're panicked about, and that's why they want to keep the shell game going. You don't believe me? Watch this moment last night on CNN. Bakari Sellers tried to play a game with former Congressman Thomas Hearn. Now, here's what happened. He thought he had a gotcha moment. I'm sorry.
That's Peter Meyer.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Peter Meyer. I apologize. Thank you, Kevin. Former Congressman Peter Meyer, former Republican. Bakari Sellers tries to play this gotcha moment by saying, hey, who just voted to repeal the subsidies on Medicaid? Now, here's the dirty little secret. Nobody voted to repeal the subsidies on Medicaid. The Medicaid subsidies were always built in to expire right now. The only way Democrats got Republicans to agree to the Medicaid subsidies that shouldn't have been there in the first place was because of the COVID-19 pandemic. All of the work requirements that had been there for Medicaid got removed because nobody was working because of the pandemic, because Democrat governors forced people to stay home, right? So they removed the work requirements and they propped up Medicaid and Obamacare with huge federal government subsidies with monies that they didn't have. But the only way they got that passed and the only way it got through the Congressional Budget Office review was to sunset them, make them expire. Well, surely the pandemic will be over by 2025, so we're going to have them expire. And that's what happened. But this guy acts like Republicans went in and took healthcare away from you and made it more expensive. Watch what happens. It's a beautiful moment. I love moments like this.
There's clear public support to make healthcare affordable.
100%.
And the failure of the Affordable Care Act, we can call it the ACA to avoid the A word that's in there, but the reality is the subsidies were put in.
I call it Obamacare. I give it the real name that it deserves. The person who actually tried to fix our broken healthcare system that's given millions of people access to quality care.
That is given that family you were talking about earlier now $25,000.
No, that's why we actually, let me ask you this question. Who repealed the subsidies? What bill? Which
subsidy? Are you talking about the current subsidies that are going to expire? Yes, who repealed them? Those were temporary subsidies.
Who repealed them? Who did not extend them? Who did it?
Those are temporary subsidies.
Who did it? Who did it?
No, they're just weren't made permanent. They just weren't made permanent. The Biden budget that, by the way, a bunch of Democrats supported. And you talk about Democrats coming back to the table in this case. Democrats don't need to come back to the table. They need to pass the budget they've passed 4 times in the past. Right?
Did you see the metamorphosis on his face there? Watch it again because he does this whole, because he's got this big, oh, this is my moment. This is my moment. And Meyer goes, wait, you mean the subsidies that were set to expire? Nobody killed him. Watch Bakari Sellers' face as he realized that he just stepped in it and that he's trapped. And then he tries to laugh it up. It's the phoniest laugh you'll ever see. Watch it again.
Talking about earlier now, $25,000.
No, that's why we actually, let me ask you this question. Who repealed the subsidies? What bill? Which subsidy?
Are you talking about the current subsidies that are going to expire? Yes, were temporary subsidies.
Who repealed them? Who did not extend them? Who did it?
No, they just weren't made permanent. They just weren't made permanent. The Biden budget that, by the way, a bunch of Democrats supported. And you talk about Democrats coming back to the table in this case. Democrats don't need to come back to the table. They need to pass the budget they've passed 4 times in the past. Right. That is why the government is shutting down. Right. So they're using this leverage. Right. So the Democrats shut down the government. They hope to use this to try to extend these subsidies, to try to expand other elements. Sure. Fair. Fine. But let's talk about this for what it is. Republicans voted against this budget under Biden, and I get why Democrats are now doing it under Trump, but don't call this a Trump shutdown.
It's hilarious. It's a great moment, and good job by Meyer. Sorry for misidentifying you. Listen, I don't know where this is going to end. I thought it would be over by now. I really did. Tomorrow's the first paycheck that people are going to miss, and that's going to cause more pain. And if Republicans can't find a way to re-clarify this message and continue to beat the drum, that they're happy to talk about all the things that Democrats want to talk about, as long as they don't hold the American people hostage the way they're doing by shutting down the government on a bill that they passed and voted on 13 times before today. Maybe they'll continue to win the day. I do notice that the media isn't really talking about this story anymore. It's sort of getting lost in the shuffle. That's a good sign, because if the media can't repeat a narrative that makes Republicans look bad, which they can't really because the facts aren't on their side, then they just ignore it. And that's what they're doing right now. And ultimately, that doesn't help Democrats. Chuck Schumer the other night said, hey, we look good as this shutdown keeps going on. That doesn't help, I promise. But that's what this is really all about. It's all about politics. They're going to have a rally coming up, another No Kings rally, and they're all going to show up, and they're all going to look great, and they're all going to have the screaming paid-for crowds out there chanting their names because they're thrilled that they're resisting and they're pushing back. And that's really all this is. It's just a show to let their base know that we're still fighting, even though that fight involves people not getting paid, like our military and our federal law enforcement officers. And the truth, the facts, and reality are still on the side of the Republicans. But that doesn't always work. Not always. All right, let's go. One more. Yesterday, a huge day for anyone who cares about finally getting to the truth about Antifa. Who are they? How is it organized? What kind of destruction do they wreak on all of the major cities in this country? How is it targeting Republicans, conservatives, law enforcement, basic institutions? What's their end game? Who's funding them? And what can we finally do to stop these violent thugs? Up until this last election, we never had a president who would actually even acknowledge that they existed, or an FBI or Justice Department either. Why? Well, because they were their soldiers. They were doing their bidding. They were helping their cause. Some members of the media are still doing that. Aaron Burnett on CNN literally repeated fake talking points about Antifa. And we're going to expose the truth behind her lies coming up in just a second. But first, just to remind you who Antifa is, take a look at this and you tell me if this looks like an organized group of violent terrorists or not.
Stop! No, they're assaulting someone. They're assaulting an innocent guy. What's wrong with you? They're assaulting an innocent. You caused it. You just touched me. Do not touch me. I'm not touching you. I swear to God, if you run over my foot right now. Oh. You should go to
All right, so that is from independent journalist Brandy Cruz in Seattle. Can you notice how they're all dressed the same? Do you notice how they are all equipped? Do you notice how they all have tactics? Do you notice how they all move in a group and coordinated at various times? You've seen videos like this all the time. There's also the videos where they use umbrellas to hide their behavior and their movements and their faces from security cameras or ring cameras or whatever. It's all very planned. It's all very trained, and it's all very organized. It's Antifa. It's who they are. Brandy Cruz, by the way, used to be a left-wing Democrat in Seattle. She's now become, after watching behavior like this, an anti-Antifa independent journalist. She was at the White House yesterday. You'll hear from her in just a second. But first, here's your FBI director, Kash Patel, singing a very different tune from his predecessor, Christopher Wray, who famously said, Antifa isn't really an organized group. It's really more of an idea. What the hell?
President, The American people gave you a sweeping mandate in your victory in this election cycle, and they demanded safety and security for our citizens. And your administration, with your leadership, has provided us with the resources that we need, which is a whole of government approach to go after criminals absolutely everywhere, not just outside of this country, but within this country. And that takes a whole of government approach. The interagency seated up here with the Department of Homeland Security, our Attorney General, our Deputy Attorney General, and your White House staffers, including Stephen Miller's leadership, has allowed us to go out there and map out these networks. What we are doing at the FBI is simple. It does not require rocket science. We are following the money. Money never lies. And that's what it's going to take to bring down this network of organized criminal thugs, gangbangers, and yes, domestic terrorists, because that's what they are. They are harming everyday citizens in every single one of our communities. And the folks you see here on the right and left, they're some of the bravest men and women we have today. They're reporting the stories live time because the mainstream media won't cover it. They're putting their lives on the line. They're standing up for the flag. The least we can do is stand up for them. So you have my thanks. I read more of your stories than I do theirs because you guys are putting out the truth. And we deserve a country where you are protected as equally as they are. We in this FBI will go after with the criminals with a vengeance. We will not rest until we find every single seed, money, donor, organization, and funding mechanism that we have. And I want to echo the Secretary's comments on Scott Bessent, who's allowing us to map out these networks through their financial criminal activities, which has been going on for decades. And I would like to remind the American public, they built this disease temple of corruption over decades. And in 8 short months, Mr. President, you have crippled their foundation because of your leadership here, because of the interagency, because of people like Deputy Attorney General Blanche, and because of Attorney General Pam Bondi's fearless leadership to go after criminals wherever they are.
All right. So that just there, what you heard sent a shiver into the spine of the leadership and organizational structure of Antifa. He's following the money. Money never lies. And Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is helping them identify the network. And they named names here in terms of the network of funders for Antifa. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, as they've been mentioning, it's all independent journalists who are covering this story. Nobody with a big budget, nobody from the networks, nobody from the major newspapers covering this story. Here's one of them. His name is Jonathan Cho. He's a reporter in Seattle. He started covering the homeless crisis in Seattle and the homeless encampments. And he identified what he calls the homeless industrial complex, all the people who make money off of criminal vagrancy. There's a lot of government money in states like Oregon, Washington, and California that go to supposedly help alleviate the homeless crisis. A lot of people get rich off that, and they're directly connected, as you'll see, to this Antifa movement. Watch.
Far left extremism, as well as the homeless drug crisis in America. And I find it oftentimes those worlds intersect. And hot off the presses, what I wanted to bring to your attention today is a report from a Capital Research Center here in DC in conjunction with Discovery Institute. They just put out this study right now. And what it shows is that Antifa is heavily embedded in the homeless and housing nonprofit sector. In many cases, the homeless industrial complex is running cover for Antifa. Antifa is benefiting from American tax dollars, and they're essentially being used as the muscle. Let me give you an example. There's a group called Stop the Sweeps in many US cities right now. They get in front of encampment sweeps. What they're doing quietly is they're bringing in Antifa militants to manufacture a crisis to make the police look bad. Another group right now that is behind Antifa and working with Antifa very closely, based on the research that we have right now that we're going to give to you and your team, are the Democratic Socialists of America, also known as DSA. Again, these far left progressive groups tend to be aligning themselves with Antifa.
Yeah, and DSA, by the way, for those of you not paying attention, that's Zoran Mamdani's proud political party in New York, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar's. Jonathan Cho, by the way, I've interviewed him several times. He's not a conservative. He's not a right-winger. He's not MAGA. He's just looking for the truth. He's actually liberal, last I checked, up in Seattle. But I love that they're actually naming names. Now, when you're talking about these non-government organizations and how they play the shell game with the money to hide their nefarious operations. There's no group better to find that money and trace the dollars than the Government Accountability Institute. That's the group headed up by the incredible Peter Schweitzer. You read his books, you see he traces the money to all of this stuff. And they had a representative there at this meeting yesterday. Take a listen to this.
I think we know that this is not just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweitzer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network, it's other funding networks, the Arabella funding network, the Tides funding network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss of Switzerland. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share 3 money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number one, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number two, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, et cetera. And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism. These groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So
taxpayer money, federal tax dollars directed to these groups that then fund what they call Riot Inc. It's big business tearing down the cities of America, tearing down law enforcement, and wreaking violent, destructive havoc in our communities. Riot Inc. I love that this event happened. I love that they're naming names, that they're bringing proof, they're bringing evidence, they're showing the trail of money. Did you see any of this last night on the news? Any at all? We saw a little bit of it, mostly on Fox News. Here's 2 of the members of that panel. Andy Ngo, again, a man of the left out of Portland. He's been reporting on Antifa. He's been a victim of Antifa. They want to kill Andy Ngo because he's been telling the truth of them. And then Savannah Hernandez with, I think she's with Blaze. She was on with, they were both on with Laura Ingraham.
How important is this moment now, given what happened to Charlie, the 2 assassination attempts on Trump, the ICE facilities, the attack on the Catholic students in Minneapolis? The list goes on and on.
Yeah, the list goes really long. We don't have any more time to lose. And I think that's where earlier today I suggested that the DOJ could look at federal felony conspiracy charges. That was done in San Diego County last year, and that prosecutor successfully broke up an Antifa cell. The State Department can designate the international arms of Antifa as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, and open individuals up to sanctions.
That's right. And that's when you really get serious about stopping this kind of behavior on our shores, here in our country. Here's Savannah Hernandez picking up the point.
Do you think, Savannah, and what you saw today, you had Bondi there, you had Patel, the president himself, they're serious.
Oh, absolutely, Laura. And this is such a change from the past administration who, quite frankly, ignored independent journalists like ourselves and completely ignored what was going on in the streets of America. Now, journalists like myself have had to come to Portland to report on what is going on because Andy himself can no longer do that. We've had to pick up the torch for Andy because he was so brutally assaulted. And this is still continuing today. So to see the administration take this seriously is a breath of fresh air. To see Antifa declared a domestic terrorist organization and the entirety of the admin care enough to listen to the journalists who have been demonized by the same media that was in the room with us was an incredible move in the right direction.
By the way, forgive me, she's with Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's group as a on-the-ground journalist and analyst for them. Did you hear what she said, though? Andy Ngo has been brutally attacked by these people. He's a reporter, and he's been attacked. He lost sight in one of his eyes for quite some time because of the attack on him. They threw concrete blocks at him. Where's Jake Tapper and all of the guardians of the First Amendment and freedom of the press championing this guy? Where's his awards for going into the belly of the beast as a war correspondent here at home and getting attacked like this? Where are they celebrating him and joining him? No, it takes a Turning Point USA reporter and some of our town hall reporters as well to do the job. We'll show you him in a minute. Here's another one on Jesse Waters last night. This is Nick Shirley, who was at the table.
Yeah, well, they're mad because the truth is being shown. Antifa has been running their operation in a building right next to an ICE facility for over 100 days. And legacy media has never even gone to show what was happening there. And it just took a few independent journalists like myself to show America what was actually happening.
I mean, they're accusing you guys of recycling video that's like 4 years old. I mean, what have you seen recently that just shocked you?
Yeah, just how Portland PD, they would not stand up for the independent journalists when it was very obvious. There was video footage of them getting attacked by some of these Antifa members, and it just happened that for some reason these independent journalists could actually beat these Antifa guys in a fight when it came down to it. And they
look at the images, look at the videos, look at what's going on in these streets, and this is not a story. This is not a story on any of the other channels. Oh, well, actually, it is a story over on CNN. Erin Burnett, she covered it, but she covered it kind of with a different angle. This is Baghdad Bob level propaganda here. Watch what she had to say. This is disgusting.
And Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security actually took that further.
This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous.
That's pretty incredible, right? Hamas has just been engaged in a 2-year war that we just announced the first stage of a peace plan to a few moments ago. And ISIS, these are incredible things to say. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and defend anybody who considers themselves part of an Antifa movement, such that it is. But such that it is the operative part of that sentence. Antifa is far from a major sophisticated terror organization like Hezbollah, Hamas, or ISIS. In fact, it's not even like far-right groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which have had national leaders, unlike Antifa. There is no organized hierarchy to the group. And according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, I just want to make sure you heard this part.
I'm not going to sit here and defend anybody who considers themselves part of an Antifa movement, such that it is.
Except that's exactly what she did. I love it when journalists do this. Journalists, teleprompter readers. Listen, I'm not going to carry any water for Antifa and then do 5 minutes of distortion and propaganda, literally, all right, figuratively carrying water for Antifa. That's exactly what she did. I'm not here to defend Antifa, so now sit back and enjoy while I defend Antifa. Now, you heard that last little part there about this study.
But such that it is the operative part of that sentence. Antifa is far from...
Hang on.
...hierarchy to the group. And according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
There you go. The real violence out there is from right-wingers. All right. Who was that group again? Center for Strategic and International Studies. Okay. Over at the Post Millennial, they've got a write-up on that group and specifically about the report that Erin Burnett just cited on CNN. Let's read along together, shall we? The Center for Strategic and International Studies includes jihad Islamic terror attacks as right-wing. Did you hear me? Islamic terrorism is categorized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies as right-wing violence. Jihadis who try to kill innocent Americans and Jews is categorized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies as right-wing terrorism. It's even worse. Even though those attacks, like those carried out against Israel by Hamas in 2023, are supported by the American left and not the American right. Left-wing attacks are remarkably less lethal overall than jihadist or right-wing attacks, they write in their report. Part of their definition of what constitutes right-wing terrorism includes opposition to government authority, believing it is tyrannical and illegitimate. That's literally exactly what Antifa stands for. Those are the views, as the postmillennial writes, held by Antifa and leftists who march against the federal government's intervention in American cities. So understand this. If you are marching against ICE right now and you start throwing rocks and you create a violent attack against ICE agents, the Center for Strategic and International Studies will call that right-wing violence because it's opposition to government authority. Make it, and this is the study that Aaron Burnett just cited on the air. There's more. The report doesn't include all of the attacks on Tesla dealerships, Tesla owners. It doesn't include leftist violence. The firebombing of Governor Josh Shapiro's home, they don't call that left-wing violence. Or the assassination of the Israeli embassy workers on the streets of Washington, D.C. That wasn't left-wing violence, according to them. The report further leaves out the direct attacks on federal ICE agents, like those of which Antifa has been directly involved in Portland, Oregon, and other locations. So it's real easy for Aaron Burnett to cite this study and say, well, you know, whatever Antifa is doing out there, it's nothing compared to right-wing violence, because the report actually calls left-wing violence right-wing violence. They just lie. They just lie. Or they don't cover the story at all. Over here on this program, we're produced by Town Hall, of course, and our former colleague, Julio Rosas, made a name for himself going into the belly of the beast. He's a retired Marine, and now he takes his fighting instincts with a camera, and he records exactly what these people have been doing, and he's been doing it since 2019.
President, for having us here, and not to sound like a broken record, but it needs to be said that Antifa is real. Yeah. It's real. It's a threat. I just saw them last weekend over in Portland while they're causing mayhem over there. And the reason why they're such a big problem is because we have Democrats and a lot of people in the mainstream media refusing to acknowledge that they even exist, right? So how can we as a country begin to address it if we have large swaths of, these people who are supposedly decision makers and people who are supposed to inform, they don't want to say that it exists. Because the common argument is like, well, they're not a real organization because there's no national leadership. They don't have a national headquarters. So how can law enforcement go after a group that doesn't exist like that? Well, law enforcement goes after criminal groups that organize to rob banks or do smash and grabs. They don't have a registered LLC. They don't have official membership cards. They don't have, a business address. But law enforcement still goes after them because they're working as a group. These people don't just show up, randomly at the same time to do the same thing, dressed in a very similar fashion, espousing the same ideology. And they say, well, it's an ideology. It's like, well, yes, it's an ideology because there's people alive, present, that believe in it, and they're acting on it. And so I've been very well aware of what Antifa's been doing. I was very busy during the riots in 2020. That was probably my most exposure to them prior to this year. I've been at the ICE facility at Broadview. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, unfortunately, but that's where I grew up around. Like I said, I was in Portland. I was covering the riots in Los Angeles as well. And probably one of the most disturbing parts about that is, in addition to Antifa being present, they were tagging the streets with CJNG, which is Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, which is a cartel. So you have these people who are working basically in concert with other terrorist groups to say that we're here, we're present, and we're gonna attack federal agents. And
that's right. That's Julio Rosas. So take a look at all of his remarks. You can find it on his X account. But we're proud of our friend Julio, even though he got a little big for his britches and went independent. We're still part of the Town Hall family over here, Julio. I kid. We started with that video of Antifa activities in Seattle by Brandy Cruz. Brandy Cruz was there, and there was a lighthearted moment that we want to end with here. She was telling her story to the president, and she said this.
I'm living proof that you can recover from TDS. I had strong Trump derangement syndrome for probably 8 years. This is one of the reasons I recovered from it. And by the way, it's much better to not have TDS. I'm happier, I'm healthier. more successful. I even think I got a little more attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. You know, I watched, I'm a
Real fast. I don't know if you heard that. The president chimes in and says, very attractive. Which I just like that was his instinct there. Did you hear it? Listen for the president.
attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. You know, I'm a reporter in Seattle, and frankly, I could not care any less what any of you have to say about this meeting. Could not care any less. We're not here for you. I'm not here to convince any of you that Antifa is a real thing, because if you have not come to that conclusion by now, you are never going to come to that conclusion because you don't want to see it. And you're going to go and you're going to say it's a bunch of right-wing conservative influencers who are here spinning a tale. I was one of you. I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years. I was a TV reporter on the streets doing my job, and I was still assaulted by Antifa. So it's not about being conservative. It's about people who go there and show what they're doing. And when I saw, after all those years, that the media wouldn't be honest about what was happening, that Democratic politicians wouldn't be honest about what was happening, I thought, well, gosh, if they're not being honest about that, maybe they're not being honest about President Trump either. And it opened my mind to just looking at things for what they were. And now I find you quite funny, actually. Now it's like I said, I'm much happier.
Yeah, listen, like I said earlier when we were talking about the peace deal, everybody has a moment, I think, where things start to clarify for them politically, spiritually, morally, ethically. And I wonder, just as Brandy Cruz just explained, as you look at the reality of Antifa, when you see the violence, when you see the obvious organization, and now as we start to peel back and reveal the financial structures and the funding, I wonder how many people will be sick and tired of either mainstream journalists just ignoring this story, these legacy corporate media members just pretending like it doesn't exist, which is offensive and insulting of your intelligence, or even worse, when you see what Aaron Burnett did, or when you see other journalists who will, yes, acknowledge that this thing is a thing. They'll show you the video, but then they'll try to convince you, oh, but it's not organized. Well, they sure look organized. How did they all show up at the same time at the same place? But it's not actually anything that has any sort of nefarious structure, really, because they're all wearing the same clothes and they're all coordinated. They look like they've been practicing and rehearsing and training and drilling. They're all dressed and carrying the same kind of weapons and shields and protective gear. And it's not organized. It's not structured. It's not. At what point do you do what Brandy Cruz does and have a light go off and say, whoa, you're lying to me. And if you lie to me about this, what else are you lying to me about? And then the next thing you know, you become much more attractive. All right, thanks for watching the show. It's a good time to tell you, speaking of all those liars, that I have a book about this. It's called Shameless Liars, How Trump Defeated the Legacy Media and Made Them Irrelevant. It's a good one, and it's available all over the place. This is a paperback, but there's also hardcover. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel, please. We appreciate it very much. And now let's get to your super chats. What do we got? God's best friend, Cheerio, £2 super chat. Starmer has won. The sausages are free.
I don't know, man.
Well, clearly he's talking about the Prime Minister of England, Keir Starmer. But I don't know how that translates to free sausages. Is this the moment? Nah, TDS is terminal. I hear you. But I want to be hopeful that maybe there's going to be some people who come around and say, wow, Trump did something great here. Maybe I was wrong about other things too, but I'm naive. The left in Israel is in mourning. Yeah. Those are the people who are unhappy today, are lefties whose politics are more important than people's lives. You're right. God's best friend is very active today. £5 super chat. Arafat and Obama won the Nobel Prize. If someone offered me this prize, I would sue for libel. Exactly. That's how I stand about it. If I were Trump, I would say, tell you what, I appreciate the offer, but until you rescind Al Gore, Barack Obama, and Yasser Arafat's, I don't want to be in that club. That would be the power move, wouldn't it? I wonder what they're saying in Oslo today. $10 super chat from Ball State alum. Thank you, Jeff. I think Hooters spokesboy facial expressions look like he needs a little more fiber in his diet. And no, I'm never letting go of that joke, Larry. Sorry, not sorry. Don't be sorry about that at all. But what was with the head cock? Am I the only one who saw the cock of the head? Thanks, Jeff. God's best friend, £2 super chat. It's not Trump. It's the Israeli soldiers. Don't know what that's a direct response to, but thank you, sir, for the £2.
We need more context, God's best friend.
Yeah, he does. He likes to just fire off the little one-liners. Stumble Boots for $2. Clippy, you're cool too. Thank you for that. Patrick with a £5 super chat. A head tilt to the right with furrowed brows shows confusion and skepticism. Tepper was perplexed. The Caitlyn didn't totally endorse his theory. I guess that could be it. Are you a body language expert? It's so. Have you tried to do that? It actually hurts my neck to do what he did. Jeff Dupuy, Senior, $2 super chat. U.S. aid gone. Healthcare is all that Democrats have. Oh, U.S. aid is gone, so healthcare is all they've got. Yeah, it's their slush fund. Thanks, Jeff. Epic beard. Lou Gunn with a $4.99 super chat. Larry, if you took backstage assistance for town hall, I'd offer to help you and Kevin. I'm not too far, so just let me know. I'd bring coffee too. Well, we do have plenty of coffee in the studio, Lou. I don't know. Do we need assistance right now backstage at town hall?
You know, when applications open up, we'll let Lou know.
There you go. We are hiring now and again. Right now we're not, but we were hiring a little while ago. Thank you, Lou. Susan Shellett with a €6. We should do this live sometime. We should like raffle off, right? So like an audience and do it live in studio. We'd have to have a screening process. Susan Shellett with €6. They're doing it again, changing tribalistic left-wing ideology to right extremists, as with Hitler. That's exactly what they're doing. They try to tell you that Hitler was a conservative right-winger. And now they're telling you that anti-ICE violence is right-wing violence. It's through the looking glass time. Thank you, Susan Shellett, for the €6. Lou Gunn with a $1.99 super chat, just trying to help you reach your SC10 goal. SC10.
Subscriber 1 million, maybe?
Oh, okay. Can Lou help with that? Lou Gunn, $4.99. I respect Cruz for being honest about her past TDS. Sadly, to most Democrats and libs, it's a choice terminal chronic illness with no cure. Yeah, I know. It is. I don't know, but I've met never Trumpers before. They never had TDS per se, but they were definitely never Trumpers who have come around. My co-host this morning on my morning show in Washington, D.C., Bethany Mandel. Bethany Mandel, you probably know her on X. She's a activist for the families, the hostage families out of Israel. She was never Trump back in 2016. And she admitted yesterday after the peace deal came through, and she is like in tears of joy right now. And she said, I have never been so happy to be so wrong about something. She was never Trump. And she started to come around, I want to say toward the end of 2017 is when she started to come around finally. It took her husband a little while longer, Seth Mandel, over at Commentary. But anyway, but that's not TDS necessarily. But I hold out hope. I hold out hope that people start to see the truth here. Vengeance is God's. I like George Washington with the MAGA hat with a $4.99 super sticker. Thank you for that. Appreciate it, sir. And Lou Gunn, $1.99 super. I'm trying, Larry. Number 7 super chat. Oh, SC is super chat. SC is super chat. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is there like a space limit on the super chats that they're not allowed to say?
No, there's a goal.
I'm going broke here. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to milk you for more money, Lou Gunn. I promise. Do you have Italian? We do not. No, we have. Our coffee's not great. What do we have? We have Dunkin' Donuts there. JG ends up bringing the Dunkin' himself, right?
That's correct.
What's the other coffee? It's one of those pod machines. Oh, no, but we also have the Nespresso, that George Clooney thing, but nobody really uses it. I like to use it when I'm in the studio. But I'm not often in the office, although I'm supposed to be coming in more often, Kevin. Oh, in fact, did you get the memo? I'll be in the office. I probably shouldn't give dates about my movements, should I? But I'm in studio. I'm in the office next week and then the week after. Do you know that?
Well, that kind of sounds like an after the show conversation.
We probably should have that conversation after. Yeah, but people like it when we, Thank you, Lou Gunn, for the $1.99 super chat. Now stop. Save your money. There's a government shutdown afoot, don't you know? Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.